Yellowstone Supervolcano's shadow is observed on the Earth's surface. Large reservoir of magma. The latest details on Yellowstone Caldera Chronicles shows us what kind of a magma has erupted. Latest Caldera Chronicles issue. It's a weekly column written by scientists and collaborators of Yellowstone Volcano Observatory. This week's contributions from Mark Stetlin, research geologist with the U.S. Geological Survey. It's well known that beneath Yellowstone's caldera lies a large magma reservoir. That's a location beneath the vent of a volcano where molten rock, the magma, is stored prior to eruption, also known as magma storage zone or magma reservoir. This is where it is. Now, it's composed mostly of silicic magma. That's magma that contains more than 63% silica. It's generally viscous, gas-rich, tends to erupt explosively. It includes rhyolite and dacite. Now, it's also called rhyolite. The silicic magma is rhyolite. Volcanic rock or lava that characteristically is light in color, contains 69 or more % silica, is rich in potassium and sodium. Low silica rhyolite contains 69 to 74% silica. High silica rhyolite contains 75 to 80% silica. So these rhyolitic lavas of Yellowstone are viscous and tend to form thick, blocky lava flows or steep-sided piles of lava called lava domes. Rhyolite magmas tend to erupt explosively, commonly also producing abundant ash and pumice, as Yellowstone has released in the past. We can even estimate what the magma reservoir may look like from seismology. But did you know that Yellowstone's magma reservoir produces a shadow that we can observe on the Earth's surface? At first, it may seem odd to think about a volcanic system such as Yellowstone's having a shadow. How could something that is underground even create a shadow? Instead of resulting from blocking rays of sunlight, this magmatic shadow results from Yellowstone's magma reservoir blocking deeply scorsed mafic magma called basalt. Mafic describes a magma that contains lower amounts of silica and is generally less viscous and less gas-rich than the silicic magma we talked about before, tends to erupt effusely as lava flows, and includes andesites 57 to 63% SiO2, basaltic andesites 53 to 57% SiO2, and basalts 47 to 53% SiO2. So these mafic magma called basalt, the volcanic rock or lava characteristically dark in color, that's the basalt, it's gray to black, and that contains 45 to 53% silica, rich in iron and magnesium. So basaltic lavas are more fluid than andesite or dacites, which contain more silica. So these are more fluid. So Yellowstone magma reservoir blocking deeply sourced mafic magma, the basalt, which is very similar to the type of magma that erupts in Hawaii. So we could take that as a standard. That's what it would look like from reaching the Earth's surface. Okay? The magma shadows resulting from Yellowstone's magma reservoir blocking deeply sourced mafic magma, similar to the magma that erupted in Hawaii, from reaching the Earth's surface. The presence of this shadow, in fact, was some of the first evidence that Yellowstone hosts a large magma reservoir. And before we can understand how this shadow forms and what it looks like, we need to know a few things about different types of magma at Yellowstone. Yellowstone erupts two different types of magma. The rhyolite, as we said before, which is the light and full of and viscous with 63% silica, viscous, gas-rich, erupting explosively. And then we have the basalt, the kind that we see in Hawaii. So those are the different types of magma at Yellowstone. And Yellowstone erupts two different types of magma, rhyolite, basalt. The rhyolite magmas are the most famous at Yellowstone, and these can be very explosive. In fact, it was a large eruption of rhyolite that produced present-day Yellowstone caldera. Not the basalt, but the rhyolite. So, subsequent, less explosive eruptions of rhyolite have since filled Yellowstone caldera with large lava flows. This rhyolite is derived from a magma reservoir located in the shallow crust. It's about 3 to 10 miles in depth below the Earth's surface, and that provides the heat to fuel Yellowstone's vast hydrothermal systems of hot springs, mud pots, and geysers. We know that Yellowstone has 60% of the world's geysers and over 10,000 geothermal areas. Now, while rhyolite eruptions are the most dramatic events at Yellowstone, there's another equally important magma type that erupts at Yellowstone, but is less dramatic in fashion. This other magma type is called the basalt. While rhyolites at Yellowstone are formed in the shallow crust, basalt magmas hail from much deeper parts of the Earth. The basalt magmas, as we know, they look like what we have in Hawaii. The basalt magmas are commonly generated in the upper part of Earth's mantle, which is below the crust. The mantle is the part of the Earth's interior between the metallic outer core, below the mantle, and the crust above the mantle. So that's the Earth's mantle. So the basalt magmas commonly generated in the upper part of Earth's mantle below the crust at depths greater than 25 miles and are injected into the Earth's crust, where they provide the heat necessary to generate Yellowstone's famous rhyolites. Sometimes these basalts are erupted at Yellowstone, but only in very specific places. For example, no basalts are present inside Yellowstone caldera. Instead, the basalts associated with Yellowstone caldera are located, are found southwest of the caldera, as well as north of the caldera, in the region between Mammoth Hot Springs and Norris Geyser Basin. No basalts inside Yellowstone caldera. Instead, the basalts associated with the Yellowstone caldera located exclusively around the caldera margins. Most notably, these basalts are found southwest of Yellowstone caldera. That's just below Hebgen Lake, for example, that erupted in 1959. And as well as the north of the caldera in the region between Mammoth Hot Springs and the Norris Geyser Basin, where we have Steamboat Geyser. Now, a particularly nice place to view one of these basalts is at Sheep Eater Cliffs, which is just south of Mammoth Hot Springs. So how does any of this relate to Yellowstone having a shadow? This so-called shadow at Yellowstone relates to the disruption of basalt and rhyolite magmas. In particular, Yellowstone's shadow refers to the fact that there is a complete lack of basalt within Yellowstone caldera, where only the rhyolite is found, but an abundance of basalt surrounding the caldera. And the reason for this shadow is that hot rhyolite magma is less dense than the basalt magma. And just as your shadow results from your blocking the sun, the magmatic shadow at Yellowstone results from the low-density rhyolite magma reservoir in the shallow crust blocking deep-sourced basalts from reaching the surface. Instead, these basalts are either trapped under the rhyolite magma reservoir or erupt along the outside of this magma reservoir. So the basalt-free region in Yellowstone caldera shows a shadow of Yellowstone's shallow rhyolite magma reservoir. It's through seemingly simple observation like this that early geologists at Yellowstone and other volcanic systems recognize the presence of large magma bodies in the shallow crust of Yellowstone, or wherever else they're observing them. Over time, as the shadow rhyolite body cools and solidifies, it will become possible for the deeper basalt to punch through and erupt within the caldera. This is what has happened in the older calderas that predate the current Yellowstone magmatic system. But the lack of any basalt in Yellowstone caldera, the existence of a magmatic shadow, quote-unquote, is good evidence that the rhyolite magma chamber is still at least partially molten. The rhyolite magma chamber is good evidence that it is still partially molten. And when you have these, you have here the schematic drawing by USGS of the magmatic system underneath the Yellowstone caldera, and the process is leading to the shadow zone. We have from the bottom, we have the basalt originating at depths. And then you have the columns coming up towards the surface. Now above these basalt columns, you have the magma reservoir producing rhyolite resting on top of them. And that's what we have, the shadow zone showing only rhyolite eruptions, because there's a magma reservoir full of rhyolite underneath. And on the sides of that, flanking it, we have around the caldera margins, the basalt eruptions, which are outside the caldera. And this is what the map shows. The basalt in green and the rhyolite in pink. And as you can see, this is what they found. Most of the basalt is, of course, southwest of the caldera under Hebgen Lake, and also to the north of the caldera, where we have the Norris Geyser Basin. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.